the thing that made the Whitburn books great was they cut all that crap out, and instead you were dealing simply with Billboard chart statistics. What really were the hits? Well, Whitburn answered that question.
Welcome once again to the Talking Archive. I'm Josh Jacobs. By the way, follow us on Instagram at JoshDJ57. That's JoshDJ57. Also subscribe to our YouTube channel. Get updates about when new podcasts are coming up, usually once or twice a week. So definitely do subscribe. Tell your friends about us. And our conversation concludes now with Gary Theroux. Now, last time he talked about some compilations he had put together. And Gary, what was the one that you're most proud of?
I've always figured that there's a certain period in everyone's life when they figure the best music was recorded. Because I'll ask them this in research, when do you think? And they'll go, oh, between this year and this year. And I'll say, okay, what years were you in high school and college? And it's those years. And it's not 10 years. It's really 8. So I decided to cut that down even more and create a series of box sets built on 5-year blocks. Say the early 60s, the late 60s, the early 70s, the late 70s, and extend that all the way back into the early 30s, a different box set for each 5-year period. And what it would contain, basically the 10 biggest hits of each year in that quarter, in those 5 years, plus the top male singers, female singers, groups, dance hits. For the early 50s one, I had a program of TV favorites. So it was everything there from Lucy and Desi to Milton Berle and a whole bunch of stuff like that. Jackie Gleason singing "And Away We Go." Mm-hmm. And the whole idea was to have a capsule of 5 years of music and pop culture because that's more sharply focused. And this became an enormously successful series of albums. And you put one of those box sets on, and you are back in that time. You think about the decades. Think about the 60s. The 60s began with Chubby Checker and ended at Woodstock. How do you put that together into a box set?
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Well, it's interesting because the movie American Graffiti took place in 1962, and I forget who said this, but they said 1962 was really the year that the 1950s ended. So you're right, because come 1966 is when the world really changed. You started seeing the introduction of psychedelic music, Rubber Soul, Pet Sounds, Sgt. Pepper, Magic Mystery Tour, Jimi Hendrix, and just the world changed overnight pretty much within that. Well,
the transition point, actually, I would place it at a different place. In most cases, it's the middle of the decade. In the mid-50s, along came Elvis. In the mid-60s, along came the Beatles. In the mid-70s, along came disco. So it's really more of the middle of the decade where there's a significant musical change.
That's true, yeah.
So the 50s, I really put the 50s ending in 1963.
That makes sense, definitely. Because the pre-Beatle era, as they call it, or the rock and roll era, as Time Life's variety of compilations put it. Now, those different box sets and compilations, how many of them do you have in your collection currently of all the things we talked about today?
Well, you mean the ones that I put together?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, I have all of them. So there's about a little under 100.
Oh, okay. Is there some type of storage, like humidifier room, to keep them, safe so that way they don't deteriorate?
Well, CDs are pretty darn durable.
Oh, okay.
I actually have an insulated attic archive where I have a lot of stuff, but it's not big enough to hold everything. So there are actually 3 different floors of my house that have archival material in it. On the floor below that, which is where I'm sitting, is my office, and one wall is entirely lined with music research books.
Wow.
And in another part of the room is some of my interview archive, because I have interviews on everything from 78s to LPs to 45s to cassettes to CDs to, well, just about everything other than cylinders.
Mm-hmm. What is the best research book, in your opinion, that you've read? Because you said you have all these great books on research. Which one is the cream of the crop?
Joel Whitburn's record research books.
What's it about that stands out among the rest?
Well, before Whitburn came along with those, which I think was in 1969, when he published the first one, which had a red cover. It had a small ad in Billboard, and I saw it, and I bought one. Still have it. Most books dealing with music, and particularly with rock history, were written by critics who wrote about their favorites and overemphasized their favorites and ignored everything else. The Rolling Stone put together a huge book that's supposed to be rock history, but it's rock history as filtered through the editors of Rolling Stone. The thing that made the Whitburn books great was they cut all that crap out, and instead you were dealing simply with Billboard chart statistics. What really were the hits? Well, Whitburn answered that question, and you would have had a really distorted opinion of what the hits were if you had gone to previously published books. So you really found out what truly were the top hits across the country in Whitburn's books.
How many times did you get to meet Joel Whitburn?
Actually, I never met him. We exchanged correspondence several times, but I never did get a chance to meet him. He was in Wisconsin, you know. Yeah,
that's great to hear about him, because I remember reading his books also, and they're just very insightful. And now, is there a website we can look for your work and other programs that you'd like to share?
Well, probably most police departments. No, there is a Facebook page for the history of rock and roll with Wink Martindale, and you can check that out. You can also check out my LinkedIn page.
Okay.
But other than that, there isn't a formal website. Okay. I've been toying with the idea of doing that, but I'm not a web designer, and I really don't have the expertise to put one together.
Is there anything you'd like to add to conclude the interview?
Well, as I said, every year now for over a decade, Wink and I have also collaborated on the 100 greatest Christmas hits of all time, which is a pretty interesting special in that it has every original Christmas hit you could think of, plus a lot you had no idea ever existed. There aren't a whole lot of radio stations that ordinarily will, say, program a Christmas recording from 1896. But we worked that into this. It's a 30-second clip of Jingle Bells from a cylinder. But we wanted to put that in simply to show the timelessness of Christmas. And the fact that in a given hour of our Christmas countdown, you will hear original Christmas recordings from literally any decade you could think of, plus very often the stories behind those songs, often told by the hit makers themselves. And there are basically three kinds of Christmas records. There are the sacred carols, for example, the religious theme things. Then there are the Santa fantasy songs, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer and Frosty the Snowman and all that stuff. And then there are the sentimental romantic songs, like I'll Be Home for Christmas.
Yeah.
And the trick is programming those in a way that they will flow from one to the next without sounding like a train wreck. And some of the Christmas tracks over the years are very moving. Some are really rock. Some are funny.
Alan Sherman's 12 Days of Christmas.
Oh, sure, and others. I mean, we've got literally everything from brand new Christmas tracks that have only been out for literally a few months on back to that version of Jingle Bells, and literally everything in between. And the idea, of course, was to make it to show the diversity of Christmas music, but also to make sure that it was fully entertaining all the way through. So it's fascinating fun to run through all of this and really feel the warmth and good feelings of Christmas.
Question that just came up to me right now. Were you able to play any movie clips or TV clips during this Christmas special, or is that a whole licensing issue that you would not be able to do that?
It depends. We have, for example, a clip from It's a Wonderful Life, where Jimmy Stewart comes to realize in a pivotal moment of the film. However, the version which we have in the show is not taken from the soundtrack. It's taken from the radio adaptation that was done at the same time the movie was released. Also, Miracle on 34th Street, there was also a radio version of that.
Wow.
And we pulled a clip off of that. And those are both in the public domain.
Oh, okay.
So you're able to get away from it. But It's a Wonderful Life is kind of interesting in that the movie, as you probably know, was actually a bomb when it opened. And it caused the destruction of the film production company. And the film fell into the public domain. And television programmers around Christmas time discovered that this public domain movie was available and they could broadcast it without paying any royalties. And they thought, well, huzzah. And so it was television exposure that made It's a Wonderful Life get discovered by the public. And, in fact, you could buy inexpensive VHS copies of the movie for quite a long time, up until the point when some enterprising folks went to the estates of the composers of the soundtrack score and bought the rights to the soundtrack score from them, and then made a deal with Republic Pictures, which had nothing to do with the production of the movie, and then sent out cease and desist letters to everyone who was making copies and selling them of It's a Wonderful Life or broadcasting it, saying, you can't broadcast this because we own the music rights, and you can't sell copies because we own the music rights. And that's why now, if you watch It's a Wonderful Life at Christmas time, it's usually on NBC in prime time, and that's a licensed version. So what those copyright owners own is the music score, but what they don't own is any of the images in the film. So when you see Jimmy Stewart and Donna Reed and stuff embracing, those pictures they don't own, but they own the score.
Wow.
And you can't broadcast the movie without playing the score because you can't separate it from the soundtrack.
That's so interesting. Kind of boggles the mind.
Yeah.
This is the Talking Archive. I'm Josh Jacobs. We're talking with Gary Theroux. He's radio personality, author, educator, and multiple award winner, writer, and musicologist. And we learned a lot of great things today. And,
the educator part was particularly fun when I got to teach the history of popular music at UCLA. They called me up and said that we have all these students who want to be music majors, but all we offer is classical and a little bit of jazz. But they want to get jobs in the music industry, but we have no one on our staff who has ever been in the music industry. Would you come and teach for us? So I did. I put together a course called Pop Music on Record Yesterday and Today. It started with Edison's Mary Had a Little Lamb in 1877 and tracked right on up to whatever was on the charts that week. And it was not, a Mickey Mouse waste your time course. I was serious about it. I mean, I made sure that it was a lot of fun and there were a lot of laughs in it. But the idea was to fill it with useful information for people who really wanted to get a job in the music industry. And that was great. And I continued to teach that right up until I got the fateful call from Reader's Digest to come to New York and work for them.
Have you gotten to teach in New York as well at one of their universities, that same course?
I thought about doing it because there was no course. I had to create it. And I still have all the teaching materials. I did check around the New York area to see if there would be a college interested. Quinnipiac expressed some interest, at least the head of the music department, but when he told the other faculty members, they all turned it down. Because they're concerned the only music that counts is classical and jazz. And that's really unfortunate, because colleges turning out music majors is certainly a great thing. But if all they can do is then teach at some other school, rather than learn about music that actually reaches the public, how to create a hit record, how to have actually a career in kinds of music other than classical and jazz, of which there's very little call, is tragic, and still going on today.
Yeah, that's the thing, is like there's so many courses that colleges could be, teaching. That is one example. Also, it'd be nice if they taught a class in how do you balance a checkbook, make a budget.
Well, that's something that high schools should teach.
Oh, I completely agree with you there.
I'm envious of you, because I wanted to grow up in Southern California. I lived in New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, and then Central Illinois. And my great life goal was to find out if what the Beach Boys said about California girls was right, because I so much wanted to come out and be part of that culture. And I wasn't able to until I graduated from college. And in one jump, moved to L.A.
Wow. And is your wife a Southern California girl by chance?
No, she's the only thing I got out of college of any value, and that was Illinois State University.
Ah. So I guess the old saying goes, Bob Hastings Jr. said to me, he worked for CBS Radio for many years. He said to me one time, JJ, I got a BS, and that's basically what it is.
And it's even more so now, because colleges are so busy being woke that they've given up on the idea of real useful education. What they really need to do is study what the career plans are of their students, or at least try to steer them toward some career plans, and then provide the tools that they need. I knew what I wanted to do when I was a little kid. I wanted to be in entertainment, in radio, television, and film. And so everything I've done has aimed in that direction. But most people don't know. And in fact, when I was teaching at UCLA, one thing that I had all the students do was I said to figure out what your life goal is. What do you really want to accomplish? What type of a career do you want to have? And when I've sometimes worked as a substitute teacher in high school, they're doing the same thing. And in the high schools, I said, don't pick a college because there's a great football team or it's a big party school. Know what you want to do with your life and pick the college that is going to prepare you the best. Because the college years will be over in an instant, but you have the rest of your life to maximize your potential. And a lot of kids in college and in high school have no idea what they want to do. And they get out and they sort of stumble through one thing after another. And meanwhile, time is ticking. When my dad got out of World War II, and he wanted to get a career in chemical engineering, but there were no openings. So, and he had to eat. So he got a job working for an insurance company. And he did pretty well at it. And then he got hired away by another insurance company and another insurance company, and eventually became an executive vice president at State Farm. And when he finally retired, I said to my dad, what was it about insurance you found so interesting? And he said, you really want to know? And I said, well, yeah. And he said, absolutely nothing, but I had a family to support. And so what I did was I put my dreams away. And I tell the kids, don't let that happen to you.
Yeah, something for all of us to think about. Gary, thank you for coming on to the podcast and talking with us.
Good talking to you.
You too. Thanks, Gary. This is the Talking Archive. I'm Josh Jacobs. We've been talking with Gary Theroux, award-winning author, writer. He's also a radio producer, radio disc jockey, the proprietor of the History of Rock and Roll, which you can check out on Facebook. The current version is hosted by Wink Martindale. And until next time, I'm Josh Jacobs. Keep your mind on the things above. And as you hit the open road, don't be a slowdown spectator.